Mm. All right, welcome everyone. We're going to give folks a few moments to join. I'll do a quick introduction and then we'll get started with today's presentation. Today we are talking about the architectural strategy of moving glass walls with thermal performance. It's presented by Heather with the Western Window Systems team. And my name is Bo. I'm here with Acelab. We're helping out with hosting today's event. My colleague Kayla is also on today. She is helping out with hosting and learning some of the ropes. For our repeat webinar attendees, I'll be out of office for a little bit, so you'll be seeing Kayla a little bit more over the next few weeks. So this is a great chance for her to just start to get to know some of our webinar attendees and the process. Before we jump into today's presentation, I want to show everyone a few quick resources if you're looking for some more information after today's event. So Heather, just FYI, I'm going to take over screen share for just a moment and pass it back over to you.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. So everyone who's on this webinar has their free Acelab account. You can head to app.acelabusa.com and explore all of the free resources that we've got. While we're here today, I'm just going to show you a few quick things if you want to get some more information about Western Window Systems after today's webinar. We'll send over links to all of this in the chat as well so that you have it on hand. But if you know exactly the product or the brand that you're looking for, you can just use the search bar right at the top here. Type in the name of any manufacturer, any product. It'll cross search between all of the resources that we've got on Acelab. And you can use that to head over to their page. From here, you can get in touch with the Western Window Systems team directly. You can also scroll down and learn some more about their company. Got some videos and we've got some product information here. These you can save to your firm library into your general research and project folders. You can also open up any of these pages to view some more product information, access downloads like product literature, certifications, all of that good stuff. And scrolling down at the bottom, you can see case studies. You can also see some inspiration photos as well. So we'll send over a link to this so that y'all have it easily accessible. Last thing I want to mention is we will have some time for Q&A usually towards the end. If we don't have time for your questions, we can follow up with you after today's event, and you can just submit any questions throughout today's presentation into the Q&A. That'll make sure we've got a record of your questions so that we can be sure to follow up with you. And last thing is just keep an eye on the chat. We'll send over some helpful links and resources there, so be sure to grab anything from the chat that you might need before the end of today's presentation. All right. That should be it for me. Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. Whenever you're ready, feel free to go ahead and share your screen again and get started.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Heather Bergeron and I'm with Western Window Systems. And just a little bit about Western, we are going to be going through a product presentation during today's presentation. And we are out of Phoenix, Arizona. So we're a single source thermally broken aluminum manufacturer known for our operable big glass wall systems. And we have a full product line, which we'll be going through today as far as all the different series that we have to offer. We also have a full operable glass wall systems with operable windows and all full array of all the doors. And so we'll just continuing going through the presentation. And as Bo mentioned, if you guys have any questions, you can put those in the chat or save your questions after the presentation. So today, as far as the agenda, we're going to go through our Classic series, which is our 600 series. We also have our Performance series, which is our 7000 line. We also have our Simulated Steel series, which we released in 2018. So that's a simulated steel look of all aluminum without the cost of having steel prices and having those steel units. Then we also have our Minimalistic series, which is our 300 series, which is off of our Classic series. And so we'll explain that a little bit towards the end of the PowerPoint. Product series. So anything that you see as far as on the left-hand side of this slide is based on our Classic series. So Classic series starting at a 600 series, 670 bin operable windows. We also have our 900 series, which is our hinge doors, pivot doors being our 980. Our bifolding door systems, as far as doors and windows, is our 9550, and then our 300 series multi-side minimalistic series. Everything on the right-hand part of the product series is all of our 7000 series, which is our window wall 7630, multi-slide door system and window system, which would be the 7600, sliding glass door 7650, and then of course, operable casement awnings and things like that, 7670, hinge doors being the 7900, pivot door being the 7980, and that sums it up as far as our product series goes on that. Here's just a snapshot of part of our facility out in Arizona. So it's a 270,000 square feet, about 30,000 office space as far as square foot for our office staff. We do have a CAD department on staff as far as my team. We also have an engineering and development team as well under the same roof. We also acquired about a year and a half ago, about 80,000 square feet across our parking lot in Phoenix, Arizona. And that was just more capacity where our window line has moved from under one roof. But we are proud that everything is assembled in our facility, everything being US, except for our Hobby hardware, which comes from Germany. So that's just a high-end hardware that you can think of for our hinge door. So that's a multi-point system. So then we'll go through that on a later slide. Here's an example of a window wall series within our classic series. And obviously you can clearly see in the slide that you have these large expansions of glass and the view. You can mull both, horizontally or vertically in our fixed window system. So here is an example of having that additional structure in between the horizontal geometric shapes of the fixed units versus the 600 series fixed walls that you have on the bottom of the structure. Here on the right-hand side, you have more steel structure that's wrapped around in brake metal. We also have a corner post within our classic series. That's a 4.5-inch jam depth. And that just wraps around any steel structure that you have, or you can use brake metal locally in your area, depending on what territory you're in, which can be matched with any finish of our systems. This is a project out in California. I always base this off of a Jetson style house, but with us being a transitional modern contemporary manufacturer, you can clearly see, you have the large operable glass wall systems. This is a radius shape of a multi-slide, geometric shapes above that with structure by others. But you can clearly see the radius there and just the large expansion of glass and the great view of the ocean. Here's an example of our 600 series window wall. So a lot of horizontally molded and vertically molded structures here. At large expansions of glass, you have that natural air, natural light. Nothing's obstructing your view there. But we are very well known for having the large expansions of glass. 600 series window wall also comes with either a standard base sill, which is 3/4 of an inch as far as the frame. And then we also have a high base sill. So standard sill is typically around the perimeter with an extruded nail fin that's located 1 inch from the exterior side that is available. We have our high base sill being 1 3/4 inches, and that's just for more water protection. So, depending on your client's preference. Of course, as a manufacturer, we're always going to recommend having more water protection so that, if you're sitting the sill directly onto the floor, there's nothing that's going to be intruding onto the interior side of the building. Here's more examples of our standard base stop. You can clearly see that here, where you have about 1.5 inches setback off of the actual leg from the exterior. So this is 3/4 of an inch as far as your standard base. We also have a flush stop, which gives you more of a storefront look, in conjunction with any kind of other storefront that you're wanting to incorporate into the building. But we do have that option for you as well. And then of course our extruded nail flange here, that's obviously an inch setback, whether it's on Classic Series or Performance Series. It does set an inch setback within the jam depth. So Classic Series is a 4.5 inch jam depth, and Performance Series being 5 7/8. Therefore, nail fins are used for ease of installation and waterproofing into the rough opening. They are not available on multi-side or bifolding doors and windows. So typically any operable windows or your fixed units and things like that. We do have, for the multi-side options though, we do have what's called a stucco return kit that you're able to use as far as like, bumping that door system out to keep everything on the same plane and your sight lines the same. There are times where maybe whenever you're mulling two windows together and say they're oversized in that typical wall system, there may be times where you actually have to have structure, and we actually supply that, which is called our structural steel. So this actually goes into the cavity of the extrusions whenever you're mulling two Classic Series together. And so that's about either 10 feet or 12 feet options that you have. But our engineers actually calculate what steel dimensioning that you would be needing to have for the building, and that is inserted at our factory. So this slide is just explaining the difference between Classic and Performance, being 600 and 7000 series. You have different energy performance. So if you're looking into our Classic Series, having a fixed window or an operable window, typically that will depend on as far as your solar heat gain coefficients and your U factors there, especially the size of the actual unit. So therefore your energy is kind of going to be a little bit different within the Classic Series versus Performance Series being a 0.30 U factor across the board with a design pressure rating of 50. In a fixed unit, we have tested a 6 foot by 10 foot unit being in our Performance Series, and we can actually get up to a PG rating of 100 on just a single standard fixed unit into the Performance Series. Structural needs, you just saw the example of the Classic Series. We do and can provide that structural steel into that cavity, but you don't need that structural performance with Performance Series because it is a beefier product. It actually snaps together versus the cavity that you saw with the Classic Series. Size and capability, so whenever you're looking into the Classic Series, the 600 series, we actually have a maximum size of 60 square feet of glass per panel whenever you're talking about casements, fixed units and things like that, operable windows, versus Performance Series being the size and capability being up to 80 square feet of glass per panel. In our Performance Series, we are able to have oversized glass, and that would come from a commercial glazer instead of our preferred partner, which would be Cardinal IG. And that could typically be an oversized glass being up to about 121, 130 square feet of glass per panel. Different mulling capabilities. You saw the example as far as the Classic Series being mull, both horizontally and vertically. It's just, two extrusions that are actually able to accept each other, and you just run a bead of silicone within that mull, and you see clamps to keep everything together. Within our Performance Series, it's the same kind of extrusion, just you have the clips versus the Classic Series that you saw a little bit earlier. You can only mull Classic to Classic and Performance to Performance. You cannot mix the two. But you can use Classic in one rough opening and then Performance in another rough opening, depending on your client's preference, if they have that larger opening within Performance Series. So, but you want to make sure that you're matching your styles and your rails. So, and that's keeping Classic to Classic and Performance to Performance. Your frame depth difference, as I mentioned earlier, within Classic, that's 4.5 inch jam depth across the board on all products, and then our Performance Series being 5 7/8. Here's this slide example just shows a true Western Western Window Systems project. This is actually in California, and truly big example of a house being very transitional. You have a large window wall system here with transoms molded together. obviously on the top of the fixed units for that window wall. You also have corner post here to have that custom fit and finish for the clear story windows above the entryway. This is actually a custom wood door from a different supplier through a distributor, but it is our frame within the Classic series because you are able to use our 980 series pivot door framing for a custom wood door by others. Only available in Classic series. You're not able to use that option within the Performance series, unfortunately, but we do have that within our Classic series. And then you can clearly see here on the right-hand side on the project here, being like in the office setting, we have that corner post here as well for that miter corner unit to have that fit and finish look. On these columns, obviously they're structured by other, but obviously, you know, it matches our finish. And they either use our corner post or they use break metal by others to keep everything consistent and have that custom look. Here's an example of what our hinged windows would look like. These are obviously a left hinge versus right hinge mold together. Both options in our Classic Series 670 and our Performance Series being the 7670. Here's another example of our Classic Series being molded into a window wall application here on both, you know, differently as far as the views. But you have that sight line. That actual sight line in our Classic Series is about 3 inches, so it's very minimalistic. But it's just a great view here and from the entryway, obviously, you know, looking into a courtyard area. Here's an example of our new 7665 pass-through awning window. We actually released this option to the market at IBS, which is the International Builder Show in Vegas of last year. It's been a huge hit. We are obviously, being a manufacturer, we're obviously an innovative manufacturer as well, to where we listen to you guys as far as architects and contractors, come up with ideas as far as like what your clients are necessarily asking for. So our pass-through being that awning, it's a gas strut awning. It's we have the option in our Performance Series, and we also have a new series that we released in November of this year, and that's our 8665, which is the same, but it's just different thermal breaks and whatnot. So this is actually a gas strut, which means it's with the strut system as far as your thermal break, but a pass-through awning could be used in residential applications or commercial applications. So obviously you have the option for the pass-through of not having the sill, as you can see clearly in the example of the slide, or you could actually have the sill if your client would prefer more water protection. But I've seen more requests coming from the clients with no sill because, you know, obviously they want that smooth transition for the countertop and having that pass-through. Pass-through awning, the maximum width is 96 inches wide by 60 inches tall. You are able to mull transoms over the top. You can mull fixed units on the sides and operable systems as well, depending on your client's preference. So here's just another example of what that awning window looks like. Promoting that seamless indoor-outdoor living. Whenever you have, you know, if you're in a residential applications and you're hosting family or friends over, or you have a commercial setting where you have a bar top, where you have that indoor-outdoor living, it just gives you that, you know, indoor-outdoor feel and has that touch of modern functionality here. Here's another example of a very modern transitional home, and this is actually here in Texas. And as far as you can see, it's not just like a stucco or a brick home. You can clearly see stucco with stone, right? And so that's why we call it modern minimalistic look. And you have a whole different, full array of series of products on this particular project. And this is all Classic Series. So you have a 980 pivot door here with a mull of skylights on both sides. Actually, you can't really see on the other side, but there's a whole nother bank of fixed units that are all mulled together here for, you know, that huge grand entryway. And then you also have awnings here that are actually mold to fixed units. So this is a 670 awning and a 670 fixed unit and a 670 fixed unit. So here it is into a study area. Obviously, all the sight lines are still the same. So you're mulling 670 awnings to a 670 fixed. And then you also have a pair of 900 series hinge doors. Our hinge doors actually have the functionality of having narrow style or medium style, depending on your client's preference. But obviously, I believe the whole preference here was keeping the sight lines the same. So they use a medium style hinge door here and the medium style on the 980 pivot door. And then, of course, you have your clerestory windows here that are horizontal, vertically molded to have more of that natural light coming into the home. Now we're going to be getting into our multi-slides. So our multi-slides in our Class 6 series is the 600 series. And multi-slides meaning you have that large expansions of glass, they're operable glass wall systems, and you can either stack the multi-slides or you can pocket a multi-slide. There's not necessarily a maximum of panels that you have within the system, but we do splice the frame after 26 feet. And of course, you know, you just want to make sure, like if you have a large expansion, you might have to have structure in between those before you go into another bank of a multi-slide, because, you know, as the manufacturers, there are going to have to be some sort of limitations, but you have at least, you know, 72 square feet of glass within a multi-slide door system here. So you have a bank of, you have 5 panels here. It looks like that it does maybe pocket into the left side of the home. And then obviously you have a full array of different other products within this project as well. You have a miter corner unit with some that's mold to operable windows here on the side, but this is a great example of a full Western house being that transitional modern contemporary look with a miter corner unit, having that end cap here to maximize that expansions of glass and nothing obstructing your view. Us as a manufacturer do provide generic CAD details on our website. So whether that's in PDF form or DWG files, we are able to provide you with Revit files as well. Our Revit files are not uploaded onto our website. So if you guys are needing Revit files, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. We can provide those to you for your drawings to your client. But here's a true example of what that multi-slide door would look like if you have 3 panel options that are pocketing, or if you have just 2 panels, depending on, you know, your client's preference as far as how many panels that they're wanting to incorporate into their project. But if there are pocket, it's called a 3XP. P is for pocket. And if you just have just multi-slides that are just stacking, it's going to be a 2XO. X's meaning that the little panels, I always think of X's being like little legs that are obviously moving. So you have 2 panels that are venting, and then the O is a stationary. Here's an example of a house home project out in California. This particular client in the open position, obviously having that indoor-outdoor living, having more of that additional square footage on the exterior, does a lot of hosting. But you can clearly see that the structure is there. You have that a large expansions of glass in the open position that is stacking behind a bank of operable awning. So if, you know, in the closed position of the actual panels, you're still able to have that natural airflow and, you know, that natural light. But that is structure here that is obviously provided either by us or by a local manufacturer as far as for break metal purposes. But the panels are actually exposed on the interior side as well, and technically kind of like an exposed pocket, but still stacking behind a bank of awnings, which I thought was a great idea. Here's another example of a stacking multi-slide here, keeping those sight lines all the same vertically and having those clerestory windows of transoms on the top to have that, you know, large natural air, large natural airflow. as well as the natural light. But this system is actually pocketing. You can clearly see here where the pocket is. We do provide you with that post interlocker so that you have that custom look where you're not able to see through the actual cavity of the wall construction. So it gives that very fit and finish look. They do have a flush seal option here. We do have water barrier seal options as well for more water protection. But of course, this client's preference was, having that seamless transition from the interior versus the exterior of not having a water barrier seal. This particular project was on the Parade of Homes at IBS 2 years ago. And here's just another example of all Classic Series 600 multi-slides. And you can clearly see here that this is a 90-degree stacking system. So 90-degree meaning you have your areas where the hardware and those two panels actually meet up into a corner of being 90-degree. The panels actually stack and slide to the left and stack and slide to the right, open up and have that indoor-outdoor space into the living room and obviously the pool area. So great application here into this particular project. And again, you have clear story windows here, a fixed window wall system onto the second story here, but large expansions of glass, great view being out in Las Vegas. And one of my favorite projects that I always like to talk about, not all the time, is Western is used for residential applications. We also do commercial projects as well. We do about 85% residential and the rest of it about commercial. So this is a project with all 600 series multi-slides out in Seattle, Washington. This is off, sits right next to Interstate 5. And I love talking about it because, it's a 6-story building here that is included with all of multi-slides in our Classic Series. And obviously having that luxury feel into a commercial setting, being multifamily, into these condominium types style applications. And so within this project, we've incorporated a low E over laminated glass with extra weather stripping into the interlockers to reduce the sound. So there are times where we have folks ask us about our STC ratings and things like that, which we are able to provide that to you. But with this project being right off of the interstate, obviously they want a more sound reduction. So therefore, having that extra weather stripping helped to keep the noise levels down. Here's examples of what our sill options are. So here on the left-hand side, we have a water barrier sill, and that typically standard of being 1.5 inches to 2 inches and 2.6. 2.6 more so used into a commercial application for better water protection and things like that. But each time you add a track, you're adding a panel. So our tracks are about 2 inches. So each time you add a panel in that track, obviously that can be very large depending on how many panels of your client's preference would be. So that could be very, very large in width. So just something to keep, keep in the back of your mind whenever you're looking to design a project with our systems. So on that interior side of a water barrier sill, this would be on the interior to protect anything on the interior side. Weep holes would be on the outside. But each time you're adding a track, here's that C-shaped here on that extrusion where you're actually able to continue on with your sill, depending on your client's preference, as I mentioned. Here's the example of a flush sill, and that would be 3/4 of an inch. And it lines up with most interior forming for a smooth transition to the outside. Again, you're going to have weep holes that allow that water to drain away from the system, and also helps keep out the dust and debris. So this is not covered by water protection. So us as a manufacturer, if you do not have an overhang, we would always recommend you to go with a water barrier sill, but there are times, depending on the client, that they want more of a smooth transition. And so a flush sill is that option for that. We do have what's called a thin line sill or a minimalistic sill. And again, this is still 2 inches, and you can offset a thin line sill, but this is actually embedded into your finished floor, whether that's concrete or tile. And staggering the track also exposes that slim channel on the system to where the panels roll for that finished flooring transitions between each track. So your concrete would be obviously poured in between, or tile or anything like that. Obviously, this system is not to have like wood in between or anything like that, because there's no way for water to weep away from the system. So it's not protected and warranted against water. So if there's no overhang, then obviously as a manufacturer, we would recommend that not happen unless, obviously it's protecting you and your client. But we also have, and we would recommend within the thin line sill, that you would have a drain by others. So there have been instances on past projects where the contractor's having to do a drain by others. I know linear drain type of application, sloping that concrete flooring down or your finished floor down a little bit to where that water will weep away from the system. So something to keep in mind there. Here's our generic CADs showing, whenever you're wanting to have that seamless transition of ways to have your flooring. So here's obviously concrete, so that would be in between the two sills here. You also have your flooring up to the 3/4 of an inch of a flush sill. And then, of course, concrete up to a water barrier sill, having more of that seamless transition. We also have the option here too, where if you have an ADA application where we have a riser, a sill riser. So that obviously helps, for folks that doesn't necessarily want a tripping hazard or having a wheelchair to go over the actual sill itself. You're able to have that sill riser. Here's an example of our 600 series multi-slide, again in a 90-degree corner, and this is called an inverted 90-degree system. You saw on the Parade of Home at IBS in Las Vegas a couple years ago, where that 90-degree was actually protruded out. This is actually called inverted, which is protruded into the space, interior space of the residential project. And that depends on your client's preference, but we are able to invert as well. And obviously, from the exterior, you can clearly see it was a very good use of the space for this particular client for hosting purposes, or, just having that indoor-outdoor feel. Our 300 series minimalistic multi-slide door was released at IBS 2 years ago. And so it's the same as our classic series multi-slide as far as head sill jams, all the same, 4.5-inch jam depth. But instead of having that 2.5 inch on the interlocker, you have an inch and an eighth. So very, very, very minimalistic here as far as the panels go. We are able to still go up to 72 inch, maximum of 72 square feet of glass per panel, and still had that large expansions of glass. You're still able to pocket, you're still able to stack, you're still able to 90-degree, but it's only available with our flush sill because there's not room on those panels to have any other type of hardware or customer supplied hardware. You have to actually use the flush sill options on this system. Here was an example at the booth 2 years ago. Great representation of our 300 multi-slide series. You still are able to have clear story windows on the top as well, but you are not able to mull those to the system. You have to have structure between, but you can clearly see that very minimalistic panel here being that inch and an eighth, and you're still able to have a water barrier sill, you're still able to have a flush sill or a thin line sill, depending on your client's preference. Here's an example of our 7600 Performance Series door. Those interlockers are 2.92 inches. So obviously, still very minimalistic, but you're able to have larger panel sizes up to 80 square feet max of glass per panel. Again, here we're showing a 90-degree corner. You're able to have the flush mounted hardware. You're able to have contemporary, more of a D-shaped kind of hardware, depending on how many panels that your clients would like to have. Sometimes, obviously these door systems get very, very heavy, and clients sometimes don't necessarily just want a flush because, those systems, whenever you're trying to close everything, they want something to actually grasp on the panel. So that might be, their preference. And so we do have those options available. On our multi-slide and our performance series, yes, we still have the water barrier still same sizes, being 1.5 inches up to 2.6 inches, depending on your client's preference. We also have the flush seal options, again, being that 3/4 of an inch, and then obviously the thin line minimalistic seal as well. And here are the examples of what that flush threshold would be versus a 2-inch versus a high performance being a 2.6 with your finished flooring here. And here's your thermal strut on the performance series, which is going to give you that 0.30 U factor. And again, remember that our performance series is 5 7/8. And also remember too that you do not have an extruded nail flange on the multi-slide door systems. Here's a generic CAD detail of what our stacking door would look like in a horizontal section with the 2 panels that are venting, and then the third being a stationary option. And then we also have our water management sill. We re-released this system again at IBS last year in 2024 in Vegas. And this is a seamless flow going from the inside to the outside as far as the new level of what a water management sill would look like. So you have an internal drainage system for flush looks that optimizes that water performance. So obviously the water management sill allows for the continuous floor installation between the tracks and gives you that improved accessibility while maintaining the water control of the system. So therefore, the actual tubing itself would be underneath your finished floor, whether that's concrete, tile, wood decking, or things like that. But it is a sub-sill system to give you that seamless transition. You are able to automate our multi-slide systems, and that's done by third party. We don't actually, as a manufacturer, provide that to you. It would be through our distributors if you have a client that would like to have pricing. We are nationwide, so therefore, we have distributors in every single marketplace. But our companies that we recommend as far as automation would be Summit or Precision. Those are the 2 automated companies that have installed their systems onto our multi-slides. And automations for that client that just wants to have the system with the click of a button, which is great whenever you have multiple panels that are stacking or pocketing, because those systems tend to get very, very, very heavy. So this is a project 2 out in El Paso, Texas. I have had architects tell me before that they've actually toured this particular home. That's how they were like, oh, we've seen this project before. But we love showing it because, it's also automated as well. Our sliding glass door system. So it's our 600 series and our classic series and our 7650 and our performance series. Sliding glass doors or single track system. You are able to add screens, both to any of our door systems, actually. So I didn't mention that on the performance, on the multi-slide, and my apologies for that. But our sliding glass door systems does have a minimum and a maximum of panels within the system. You can only have a 2-panel minimum or a 4-panel maximum. And they can bipart, you can still stack them. You can have a custom option and a special request. You can have an O, XXX, or if you have a 3-panel option, it can be an OXO or an XOX. Remember, X's mean panels are moving with little legs, and O's are stationary. And so we have, obviously, we're a custom aluminum manufacturer, but we do have the options with our sliding glass doors being 12-foot options, 15-foot options, up to 24-foot options. Obviously, you can customize the heights, 8-foot, 10-foot, 12-foot within our preferred glass partner being Cardinal. And within our performance series, if you have oversized glass, obviously in our 7650, you can go up to larger heights as well. But just know that that's not going to be with Cardinal IG. It's going to be with a commercial glazer. Here's an example, another example of a OXO sliding glass door system within our performance system. Great view overlooking into the ocean there, but still, you have that large expanse of glass without having the multi-panel system in a multi-slide. We also have what's called our 3700 series multi-slide door. So not all the time is Western all customizable as far as custom options into, custom home. We do have national accounts as well with production builders. And so our 3700 multi-slide was a great option for our production builder options to their clients, to where our 3700 series is our vinyl door. So therefore you can pocket, you can stack and slide just as you can in our 600 series. You can also 90-degree corner here. You have the options of white finishes, beige finishes, bronze finishes, and black on black into the 3700 series. But it's a great option for the production builders to offer that to their clients as well. Our 9550 bifolding door system. So it's a single track system as well. You have head load options or bottom load options. You obviously have out swing options or in swing options to your clients too. There is a maximum of 8 panels. In this particular system, there's no more than that. You have to have structure in between if you want another bank. Here is an example where their structure is, but some clients want to have that bifolding system, whether it's residential or commercially, just to have that indoor outdoor feel still, but maybe more so on a budget friendly purposes and not having a multi-slide, because you have multi-slide, multi-panels, multi-track, bifolding systems just on one track system. You can flush, you can have that flush system to be seamlessly transitions between the indoor outdoor, or you have a water barrier option too. But again, you still get that 0.30 U factor here. Your styles and your rails are 2.92 inches. Performance grade of being 50, single track system. And again, all of our rollers that we use within our system are stainless steel. So, that helps against corrosion. So multi-slides have it. Our sliding glass doors have the stainless steel rollers as well as our bifolding systems too. Here's an example of a project out of Phoenix, Arizona. That's obviously a commercial space with a 90-degree bifolding system, which we used to do. We don't do 90-degree anymore, but it's clearly a great example showing a different space into a commercial setting, being into a restaurant. You are able to have different configurations in a bifolding systems. You can have all panels moving in one direction, or you can actually have a personnel door or a daily door that's actually on the jamb, and then the panels are still stacking and sliding to the right or to the left, depending on your configuration. And of course, you have hardware options for that as well. You are able to access from the exterior with odd number of panels, but if you have even number of panels, you're not able to have the access. But you're able to have, obviously open and closing, but you won't necessarily have like a locking with the keyed option. It has to be with an odd number of panels. Here's the examples of what the actual sills look like on our bifolding door system. So here's an example of what that water barrier sill would look like. Here's an example of that flush sill and a U-track. U-track would be into like a countertop application if you're wanting to incorporate a bifolding window option. As you looked with our pass-through, some, very, very asked into like a commercial application as far as having that bifolding window option. But that's actually where your rollers would actually roll. So that U-track is obviously here into the flush and water barrier sills, and that's where the rollers actually go in the head and obviously in the sill as well. Our Series 900 series and our 7900 series is our hinge door options. 900 series being our Classic series and 7900 series being our Performance series. Here's an example of a project residentially that has a pair of hinge doors in our 900 series with side lights and transoms all molded together. Obviously, all in a geometric shape where we are able to provide that as well. So there's just a prime example of what that is. These are multi-point, both in classic and performance. We do have now water rated in-swing doors, both in our performance series, and that being a 0.30 U factor and a DP rating of 50 on that. So you do have that option into our performance series, which we tested and released that last year on our 7900 series. Here's the examples of what our standard sill looks like on both our 900 series classic and our 7900 series standard sill. Your standard threshold being 4.5 inches wide, still featuring an inch exterior step, 1.68 inch for in-swing doors that help protect against water penetration and allows the full perimeter of weather stripping on outswing doors. This also helps by reducing air infiltration. And then in-swing doors are equipped with weather stripping assemblies that are mounted at the bottom of the floor that sweeps against the threshold. And then, of course, all of that is finished to match the color of the frame as well. And here's an example of what our hardware looks like, both on our 900 series classic series and our performance series being the 7900 series. This is a multi-point system, so that means that, you know, when you're engaging the door, you just throw the handle up. When you're releasing, you throw the handle down. Depending on the actual height of your client's preference, if they have a 10-foot door, you typically have a 5 multi-point locking mechanism. If they have anything over 10 feet, if say they go up to 12 feet, then you have a 6-point, and that's just for extra security, and obviously helps that panel be sucked up more on the top part of the height of the door. You have the option in brushed nickel or black. Here's an example of our pivot door. So our 980 is our classic series and our 7980s is our performance series. You still are able to mull transoms and side lights to our pivot door systems. This is a customer supplied hardware, but we do come standard at a 48-inch ladder pull offset so that, you know, that you have access to the actual lock, keyed lock option as far as being on that style of the door. We've had clients ask us to, can you have a ladder pull from all the way from the top to the bottom of the style of the pivot door? The answer is yes. It is a customer supplied option. We don't have that standard. But we do have recommendations as far as, you know, other manufacturers where you can actually get the hardware. But we do have to have, anytime you supply customer supplied hardware to us, we actually have to have the hardware in our production facility before the actual order actually goes in, because we have to bore where the hardware needs to be placed. And obviously the boring has to be done in-house for your clients. We also have had clients ask for keyless hardware. And yes, you are able to have that option on our pivot doors as well. They would be providing us with that hardware. Once the order is placed, we have to have it in-house to know where we need to bore for the keyless option as well. So ladder pulls, or you can have just, you know, a handle set depending on your client's preference for the pivot door. Standardly on a pivot door, depending on the size of the actual panel itself, the pivot point, both on the sill and on the head, typically is about an 8-inch minimum, but that pivot point, you can customize that depending on the size of that panel. So we just need to know when you guys are specifying and calling out, depending on what the client's, you know, opening, clear opening would be, we would just need to know that on your window schedule or door schedule. Here's our simulated still line. So this is actually all aluminum, simulating that still look. This project is, it was on a parade of home about 3 years ago in St. George, Utah. And we're simulating a still look without having the cost and still prices, or still units, I should say. only available as far as this simulated still line in our performance series. This was all performance on this project. We now have what's called a simulated still light bar, which is available on both classic and performance. Simulated bar, meaning 7/8 inch putty bar that looks like a still unit. You have spacer bars in between the insulated glass unit so that you don't see glass all the way through. It stops your eye. And then we hand apply in our factory the actual bars on the actual glass units itself. So you have that 7/8 bar on the exterior, flat bar on the interior that looks like a still unit. So trade of home, St. George, Utah, residential project. Then we go into a restaurant here in Texas, and that has simulated still. This is obviously on the interior side of the restaurant, so you can probably see a little bit of that flat bar, but it has a putty style on the exterior side. This is all 6 units here, but they also have hinge door options on, you can see here on the back side of, for the exterior part of the patio, which is also in Western. And this particular restaurant doesn't ever close. It's open 24 hours. So they actually supplied their own hardware to us that we were able to accommodate that in our performance series. And then obviously you have a concealed overhead closure here too, because it is a commercial space. But clearly great example of what our simulated still looks like onto a space of a commercial building. Here is just a clear-cut corner sample of what our performance simulated still looks like. So here's that 7/8 inch putty bar here. Here's that spacer bar that comes from our preferred partner being Cardinal IG. And then there's that 7/8 flat bar on the interior side. Still gives you that very narrow, clean profile, gives you that high performance of glass, being, you know, the standard of glass is low E366. We can have any glass of your choosing. We just need to know what you're going to call out. You can have 340, you can have 270, you can have 452, depending on your client's preference. We're able to accommodate that. And then, of course, you know, you still have that easy integration simulated of the doors and the windows that give that unified look. Your glass stop in the performance simulated would be a bevel glass stop. We have that option in Classic series on our 600 series as well, as far as being bevel, or we have where if you client has a preference of having that square stop, we're still able to accommodate that as well. Here's a modern transitional modern farmhouse type of project here out in Texas. And you can clearly see that, you know, each market has a different preference. And with that being said, this is an example of what that simulated flat bar would look like onto a modern farmhouse style. And you can clearly see it here in the study area. You can see it here up into the second story. Flat bar being 7/8 of an inch or 1.5 inches, depending on your client's preference. So if they want that thicker look, we have that option for them as well. And this is our almost to the end of our presentation. And this is our website, westernwindowsystems.com. That's where you're able to pull any product data sheets that you may need for any of your specifying on any of your upcoming projects or any of your current projects. You're able to go to our website, pull off that information. We have our installation instructions there as well. We have our generic CAD details on our website as well, or just if you need to know a little bit more about what we as Western do as a manufacturer, visit the website. Information's there. You can reach out to us, if, you know, or your local territory manager or architectural consultant in your market. We are happy to help and answer any questions that you may have.
Right, awesome. Thank you so much, Heather. We do have some questions for anybody who maybe hasn't submitted a question yet. Now would be a great time to do so. We can try to get to it live, and if not, we'll have a record of it.
Okay.
So let's see what we can get through here. First off, Do any of your systems meet Miami-Dade hurricane impact and wind pressure NOA requirements?
So we have been tested. Yes, the answer to the question is yes. I'm out of Texas, and I can tell you that if any of y'all are on the call, excuse me, the webinar, from Texas, I can tell you that Texas Department of Insurance has 3 of our products in our performance series only is where you're going to have the impact. You can actually pull our fixed window, our multi-slide, and our I believe it's our hinge door as well, if I can remember correctly, that is impact rated. So if we're rated here in Texas and it's on TDI, then there are parts of Florida that we are able to accommodate as well. It's not necessarily me. I don't think it's Miami-Dade. I believe it's the northern part of Florida, but I can definitely check with my engineering team to confirm that. So.
Awesome. All right, next up, where can I buy this window?
Any of our local distributors. Our distributors do have our products or should have our products installed into their showrooms. So you can contact us depending on where you're located, or we actually have a dealer locator on our website, westernwindowsystems.com, from the previous slide. And you're able to actually put in your zip code and find a local dealer near you.
Awesome. All right, looks like we've got questions for one more. So,
Sure.
with your flush sill system and the water drainage piping, have you experienced any long-term maintenance issues with the vinyl drain tubing or plastic connections? And have you experienced stoppages in the lines? How are they removed?
Don't have an answer as far as the stoppages in the line yet. I do have that's come up before from another architect that has asked me that question. So I'm waiting to confirm that with my engineering team. So I'll have to follow up on that question later as far as the stoppages. But as far as the tubing aspect of it, I have not heard or seen any issues as of yet. So hope that kind of answers the questions for now on that.
All right, great. Well, that looks like it might have wrapped up our questions. Just seeing a bunch of thank yous in the chat, so that's awesome. Thank you everyone who joined us today. We appreciate you coming out, asking some great questions. There will be a quick post-event survey as you're leaving, so if you've got any questions that come up as you're heading out, feel free to leave them there along with any feedback. That would be super helpful for us. And last thing before you jump off for today, make sure to grab the link in the chat. That'll take you to the Western Window Systems page on Acelab. You can use that to access some more product details. You can also reach out to their team directly if you've got any questions that are coming up for you in the future. All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Have a good day.